1981 to what is called the Musabaka at Bana Achi. I was there and I saw these reciters, and they're some of the best reciters in the world, Indonesians and Malaysians, you know. And I saw women, men, old, young in this competition. And I thank Allah for that trip. I would have to tell you one time when we got time how that came about. But I was supposed to go there with Imam Mohammed, but at the last minute he had to cancel. So when I got the call, he said, well, the chief ain't going, you know, so he wants you to go. I said, well, I need to talk with him. What you want me to talk with him? He went back and, you know, he said, what you want to do? I said, I need for him to tell me what he wants me to do. I didn't know what to do. That's what he said. He said, you know what to do when you get there. Allahu Akbar. Anyway, make a long story short, I witnessed this. And it inspired me so much. When I came back, I was on council of the at that time. I said, we got to have recitation. And I was already a lover of the Quran. But you know, they said women couldn't recite, and all these foreign ideas. I asked Imam about it, you know. So Amina, she began to learn how to recite. And you know, everybody should be able to recite the Quran, because they had women there that were, boom, going down. You see. The Quran is the champion for the Muslim community. This is what I'm trying to emphasize right now. The Quran is the champion for the Muslim community. And this is no criticism, but it is a criticism, constructive. I used to go to the graduations all the time in Atlanta, Georgia, at our school. And they would have these great speakers come up from our youth, giving great talks. Each graduate giving a nice talk, you know. And then when they announce this one is going to Harvard, this one is going to Yale, this one is going to Princeton, this one is going here, going here, going here, going here. And I'm just listening, listening. And great achievements they made. So I asked, I said, I told the authorities there, I said, it would be really nice when we have these graduations, and we announce where they're going to school here, going to school there, going to school here, and this one is a Hafiz, this one is a Hafiz, and this one was a Hafiz. This one has memorized so much of the Quran. He said, why? Because they have the children from preschool all the way to 12th grade. And to have somebody from the baby all the way to they graduate and not be a Hafiz of the Quran, I question that. You know? So we got these youth. These are ours. So you want them to be leaders? You can't teach them. Allah teach them. Oh, man. You go to the Quran. Chapter 2 and 2, verse 282. The longest verse in the Quran. The last sentence in that verse says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Have taqwa of Allah, because He is teaching you now, and He has knowledge over everything.
يُعَلِّمُ
وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Yeah, this is fi'l mudari. Fi'l mudari, those of you who study Arabic, it is the present tense verb. It is active and continued. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Have taqwa of Allah, for He is teaching you now. He has knowledge over everything. وَعَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Yeah, okay, so what is my point? Teach our children and let them lead the way, but who is the teacher? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's always been teaching. And what does He teach you through? Through every avenue that He has created. The 5 senses, Allah created those universities. Your 5 senses are 5 universities. And just like you have 5 physical senses, you have 5 mental senses, and you have 5 spiritual senses. On On 3 levels, you have these 6 bodies. So who is the teacher? Allah. So how do I become, how do I get into that classroom? You already in it. It's called the universe. And it's got teachers all over in this universe. The bird flies, but it can't fly as high as man. Man has been able to do everything that the creation has been able to express. His mind is turned on to study and extract from the creation. I call it, many times, it's called the ignition of cognition. Igniting the cognitive process in a thought now. And how do you ignite the cognitive process? Through questions. If I ask you right now, what were you doing last week at this time, and why were you doing it? What are you going to have to do right away? You're going to have to stop and do what? Huh? You're going to have to stop and think. Do you have plans for such and such and such? You got to stop and think. Allah has created in us the ability to answer questions, but we have to listen. It says, Qalu samitna wa atana. We hear and what? Obey. Imam said, look at your ear. He said it's shaped like what? A question mark. A question mark. He said we have to learn how to listen and obey God. So all these different things that we're indicating to you is designed to ignite the inherent nature. The inherent nature, going back to this point now, is the original nature that Allah gave to every human being, and it will come into that inherent nature has to be guided. It has to be guided. The guidance for that nature is Quran. Now, I'm going to have to do an advertisement here. There's a book called Brainstorming with the Quran. The author of it is Imam Qasim Ahmed. In that book, we took 15 thinking processes from the Quran. The purpose of why we designed it was to, first of all, show teachers who are educating our children in school how to identify these thinking processes, because they're like seeds that are already in the person, and when they begin to grow up out of the earth of their intelligence, they can see the seed growing and how to cultivate it and strengthen it. This is important. Now, I think I finished that book when I was here in May. I was working on it then. And I'm going to give you an example. I was working on the book, and I was looking for the idiomatic expression of these terms, meaning its application in everyday life. The idioms, So I was talking with one brother that was here. He was visiting us from Egypt. He was a master's in Arabic. So I asked him, I said, I forget his name. But I asked him, I said, what is, I told him what I was working on, and this your language, I'm gonna see how it's used in everyday life. I said, I asked him a question. I said, what is the idiomatic expression for fiqh, and what is fiqh in the child? What is the fiqh in a child? So he tells me, well, Imam, there's no fiqh in the child. The fiqh is a high science that you study, etc., etc., you know. And he went on to give me his dissertation of what was not fiqh in the child. But I know it was. So, I think a week or two later, I was on the plane with Imam Mohammed, and I showed him the book. He looked at it, he said, wow. He said, I'll buy this just on the cover. You know. I said, but I want to ask you about it. And I was explaining the same thing. And I said, so, Brother Imam, I said, can you give me what you might think what is fiqh in the child? And look, it didn't take no more than 30 seconds. His head dropped a minute. He was sitting there, I was sitting there. He looked at me and said, I would say it's curiosity. Just like that. My mind lit up. He said, the reason why, he said, Allah has created in the child automatic curiosity. And the curiosity leads him to understanding. Because fiqh means understanding. You see? So when you study the child now, what is this? What is that? They always ask a question because they're what? Curious. So this is a instrument in the child to turn him on to understanding. And we have the habit, I can remember the day, stop asking so many questions. I'm driving, I'm doing this. You know, you don't have time to answer the questions to even think on it. And sometimes they ask some profound questions. We're talking about developing the child. Most of the time we think you got to get a person in a classroom and teach him. The whole environment is teaching. Imam Mohammed, he said this, he told the teachers in Chicago, we had a meeting, he said, we have to learn how to have the parent, teacher, child relationship in the learning environment. That's how he said it. The parent, teacher, child relationship in the learning environment. And he said, and the learning environment is everywhere. So the old adage from Africa, it takes a village to raise what? A child. Well, it takes a masjid to raise a child. Now, if we're busy arguing and fighting with misplaced egos, and I call them misplaced egos because the ego has been misplaced. It don't know what it don't know what to do. It's got to be recognized. You didn't hear me, did you? We heard you, brother. Well, yeah, I gotta say it again because it don't look like you heard me. So the ego comes in and it disturbs the atmosphere of peace. So therefore, when the children look at it, I'm a confusion. You see? But if we're working to preserve their future, then we have to have an environment of peace to advance them toward the paradise. So what are we working on now? I'm going to conclude. I mentioned two things that I keep coming back to. The inherent nature and the guided nature. They're not just compatible, there's a continuation, Imam Muhammad said. It's a continuation of what? Of the advancement of where Allah wants you to go toward the destiny. So, and this is in Quran. This is in Quran. A lot of what I'm telling you, when expressing to you is the language of the Imam, but he got it from the Quran. And this is another thing, since this is the legacy of Imam Warith and Mohammed, and I tell people this all around the country, they always talk about the legacy of Imam Muhammad, the legacy of Imam Muhammad, brother. We want to keep his legacy alive. So I asked the brother one, I said, do you know what his legacy is? Yeah, brother. Well, what is it? Well, he was trying to help us. Somebody said gave me. It was nowhere near. I said his legacy was introducing the Quran to this community so that we can survive and have a life of productivity. I read to you in one of the workshops. Imam Muhammad said, I would not be the person I am now, and the leader I am now, if it was not for what? What? The Quran. He said many times, you looking at me as this, that, and the other, as this, what made me what I am is the Quran. So his legacy is the Quran. He brought the Quran, even though he wasn't quoting a whole lot of Arabic and all this like that, you know, but he pointed us to it. And the reason why he said he wasn't, I said, well, brother, man, why don't you teach me more Arabic and stuff like that? He said, because I want to burden the people. Because he said we're a very mystical people. You know. And I started talking about Alhamdulillahi alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitaba wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja qayyiman liyundhira ba'san shadidan min ladunhu wa yubashshira al-mu'minina alladhina ya'lamuna khazaa'ina. Where are you going now? You see what happened right away. You start getting lost. But now we've come to a point that we got Arabic classes all around the country. If you learn this book and learn it in its revealed language, let me tell you something. It's a brand new ballgame. I was listening to our youth over the weekend, and they have spent great time, a lot of hours in these colleges and universities and etc. And I said to them, I said, wow, if the Quran was over that mind, you know, and managing that knowledge, they would rewrite all of the books in these colleges and universities.
Muxon's son in college has memorized 2 or 3 juices. Yeah, there's many of them. Nuruddin's class. Yeah. He has a Hafiz class. He doesn't call it that, but that's what it is. Yeah, alhamdulillah. In the school we have it.
And that's the key. That is the key. You know. And to be able to not only memorize it, but to what?
Yeah,
think with it and apply.
Right. Alhamdulillah.
I got my son, Khalil. He's 12 years old. He recites from the Quran, he explains it, and I said, now tell me what it means. That's how I work with him. You know, in slow measures. You don't have to be a whole bunch. You know, can you tell me what that verse means and why? He began to explain it and etc. And then I just smiled. Yeah. And my oldest son, Omar, when he was at Camp Khalil, he was there working with them this past weekend. And he said, Dad, he said, yeah, Khalil, he was reciting stuff. I know you had gave it to us, but I forgot this, but he was explaining it and etc. And I knew you had explained it before, but I had forgotten it. He was just explaining things because he was exciting everybody there, you know. So when I got there, I said, brother, man, your son just took this and he did this. I said, I'm doing that. You know. And then he said, well, the only problem that I had with him, Dad, was that, you know, he was just, his ego was getting out of place. I said, well, Khalil, I told you about that. You know, I said, because you would be like Iblis and you're going to get kicked out of wherever you are. Because his knowledge is exciting.
Yeah.
His knowledge is exciting, you know. I'm gonna have to tell something of my good friend in Nasser when I was a student of his.